Shelter from the tempest. Maya Collins clutched her sketchbook to her chest as she stumbled through the forest, rain pelting her face like tiny needles. The botanical research expedition she'd joined had scattered when the unexpected storm hit, and in her haste to find shelter, she'd become separated from the group. Lightning split the sky, illuminating a small cabin nestled among towering pines. Without hesitation, she sprinted toward it, relief washing over her as strongly as the rain that had soaked through her jacket. The door creaked open with surprising ease. "Hello," Maya called, her voice barely audible over the thunderous downpour. Water dripped from her chestnut curls onto the wooden floor as she ventured inside. The cabin appeared lived in, a mug on a side table, a blanket draped over a chair, yet no one answered her call. She shivered, setting down her precious sketchbook on a dry surface. As a botanical illustrator, those drawings represented weeks of work in the highlands, cataloging rare alpine flora. Maya peeled off her sodden jacket and hung it by the door, rubbing her arms to generate warmth. "You're trespassing," a deep voice stated from the shadows. Causing Maya to jump and nearly topple a nearby lamp, a tall figure emerged from what she assumed was a bedroom. The man had olive skin and dark eyes that seemed to hold the same intensity as the storm outside. His black hair fell in waves to his shoulders, and his expression was as unwelcoming as the weather. "I'm sorry," Maya stammered. "The storm, I didn't think anyone was here." I called out, ... double quotes, not loudly enough, apparently. His accent was slight, musical even in its curtness. "I'm Maya Collins. I'm with the Highland Botanical Survey. We were documenting wildflowers when the storm hit." She extended her hand reflexively, then awkwardly withdrew it when he merely stared. "I can leave if you'd prefer, though it's quite dangerous out there." The man sighed, some of the tension leaving his broad shoulders. "Nikolai Vasquez. And no, I'm not so heartless as to send you back into that." He gestured toward a small fireplace. "You should warm yourself before you catch pneumonia." Nikolai moved to the hearth, expertly building a fire that soon cast dancing shadows across the room. Maya noticed a piano in the corner, sheet music scattered across its surface and spilling onto the floor. "You're a musician?" she asked, attempting to break the uncomfortable silence. He replied tersely, stoking the flames higher as warmth gradually returned to her fingers. Maya studied her reluctant host. There was something familiar about him, something she couldn't quite place. His movements were fluid yet guarded, like someone accustomed to being watched but resentful of it. "I truly am sorry for intruding," she said softly. "Once the storm passes, I'll be on my way." Nikolai turned to face her, his expression softening slightly as he took in her bedraggled appearance. "The forecast suggests that won't be until morning, at least. There's a spare room you can use." He hesitated. "Are you hungry?" The question surprised Maya almost as much as it seemed to surprise him. "Yes, actually. I haven't eaten since breakfast." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "I have soup. Nothing fancy." "Soup sounds perfect," Maya replied, returning the smile with a genuine one of her own as Nikolai moved to the small kitchen area. Thunder rattled the windows, and Maya couldn't help but feel that despite the chaos outside, she might have stumbled into exactly where she needed to be. There was a story here, in this cabin, with this mysterious man and his abandoned music, and something in her, perhaps the same curiosity that drew her. To document the secret lives of plants wanted desperately to uncover it. Melodies and memories, the soup warmed Maya from the inside out. A hearty vegetable broth that Nikolai had prepared with surprising skill. They ate in relative silence, the storm providing a dramatic soundtrack to their unexpected dinner. "So, botanical illustration," Nikolai finally said, breaking the quiet. "That's your sketchbook?" Maya nodded, glancing protectively at her work. "I document plant species, particularly those that might be endangered. It's part science, part art. May I?" he asked, his interest seemingly genuine. Maya hesitated, then slid the leather-bound book across the table. Few people appreciated the meticulous detail her work required. The hours spent observing the subtle veining of a leaf or the precise curve of a petal, Nikolai's fingers, long and graceful, turned the pages with unexpected gentleness. "These are extraordinary," he murmured. You capture more than just appearance. There's life in these drawings. Something in Maya's chest fluttered at the appreciation in his voice. Thank you. That's exactly what I try to do. Thunder cracked overhead, and the lights flickered ominously before plunging the cabin into darkness. Wonderful, Nikolai muttered. Stay put. I have candles. In the darkness, Maya heard him moving confidently through the space. Opening drawers, the soft scrape of a match striking. A warm glow bloomed as he lit candle after candle, placing them around the room until the cabin was bathed in golden light. Does this happen often? Maya asked, watching the shadows dance across his features, softening the hard lines of his face. Often enough that I'm prepared. He settled back into his chair. The isolation has its drawbacks. Why choose it then? The question slipped out before she could reconsider its intrusive nature. Nikolai's eyes flickered to the piano. Sometimes silence is preferable to noise. Your music, Maya ventured. Former music. Yes. His tone was clipped, but not entirely hostile. I no longer compose. Maya's gaze wandered to the scattered sheets. Were you famous? I feel like I should recognize your name. A bitter smile touched his lips. In certain circles, I was the youngest recipient of the Vermeer Prize for composition. Then I stopped. Recognition dawned. The prodigy who disappeared? Maya remembered the articles, the speculation. Nikolai Vasquez had vanished from the classical music scene at the height of his career. Leaving only rumors in his wake, he winced. Is that what they call me? Among other things, Maya leaned forward. Why here? Why alone? Nikolai stood abruptly. I think that's enough questions for tonight. The spare room is down the hall, first door on the right. There are extra blankets in the chest. Maya watched him retreat to the piano, where he simply sat without playing, fingers hovering above the keys like birds afraid to land. She wanted to press further, but respected the boundary he'd drawn. Rising quietly, she gathered her sketchbook and made her way to the offered room. The small space was sparsely furnished but clean, with a narrow bed and a window that revealed nothing but sheets of rain. As Maya settled under the blankets, the faintest sound of music drifted down the hallway, a single, hesitant melody line that grew more confident as it progressed. She smiled into the darkness. Nikolai Vasquez might claim he no longer composed, but his fingers remembered what his mind wished to forget. Crescendo of feelings morning arrived with muted light filtering through rain-washed windows. But the storm hadn't relented. If anything, the wind had intensified. Howling around the cabin's eaves like a living creature, Maya found Nikolai at the kitchen counter, preparing coffee. He looked as though he hadn't slept, dark circles shadowing his eyes. I heard you playing, she said softly, accepting the steaming mug he offered. Force of habit, he replied, not meeting her gaze. Old ghosts. Maya sipped her coffee, unsure how to proceed. The storm's getting worse. Yes. The road down the mountain will be impassable now. We might be here for a few days, he glanced at her apologetically. I'm sorry about your expedition. They'll assume I found shelter, Maya assured him. I'm more concerned about imposing on you. Nikolai's expression softened. It's not entirely unwelcome? It's been a long time since I've had company. Throughout the day, they established an unexpected rhythm. Maya sketched by the window, capturing the wild beauty of the storm-tossed forest. Nikolai alternated between reading and returning to the piano, playing fragments that never quite developed into complete pieces. As evening approached, Maya noticed a beautiful cello case tucked in a corner. You play that too? My primary instrument, actually, Nikolai admitted. Piano is for composition. Would you play something? For me? Maya asked, setting aside her sketchbook. Nikolai hesitated, then slowly retrieved the cello. As he positioned it between his knees, Maya was struck by how the instrument seemed an extension of him, completing him somehow. The first notes were tentative, almost painful, but gradually gained confidence. The melody that emerged was haunting, filled with longing, and something like regret. Maya sat transfixed as Nikolai's body swayed with the music, His eyes closed, completely transported. When the final note faded, neither spoke for several moments. "That was beautiful," Maya finally whispered. "What was it?" "Something new," Nikolai admitted, looking almost surprised himself. "It just came to me. You said you don't compose anymore?" "I don't. I haven't. Not since Arya." The name hung in the air between them. Maya waited, sensing there was more. "My fiancé," Nikolai continued, his voice low. "She was a violinist. We performed together, composed together. 3 years ago, she was driving to meet me when another car crossed the center line. His fingers tightened on the cello's neck. Music died with her that night." Maya moved to sit beside him, gently placing her hand over his. "I'm sorry. The piece I was working on when she died, I couldn't finish it. Couldn't even look at it." He nodded toward a locked cabinet. "It's in there, unfinished, like everything else." "Yet you just created something new," Maya pointed out softly. Their eyes met. And in that moment, something shifted between them. Nikolai's gaze dropped to her lips, then back to her eyes. A question in them. Maya answered by leaning forward, her lips meeting his in a gentle kiss that quickly deepened. Years of Nikolai's isolation and grief transforming into a desperate hunger. His hands trembled as they framed her face, and when they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I shouldn't have," Nikolai began.
"I wanted you to," Maya interrupted.
"I want this." The candles burned low as their bodies found a new melody together, a counterpoint of sighs and whispered encouragement. In the darkness of Nikolai's bedroom, Maya traced the contours of his body with artist's hands, memorizing every plane and hollow as he did the same to her, their exploration unhurried, despite the urgency of their desire. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside something long dormant had awakened. Dawn broke with unexpected brilliance. Sunlight streaming through the windows as Maya stirred beside Nikolai. The storm had passed during the night, leaving behind a pristine, washed-clean world. "It's beautiful," Maya murmured. Looking out at the glistening forest from the bedroom window, Nikolai came to stand behind her, arms encircling her waist. "Yes," he agreed, but his eyes were on her, not the landscape. The intimacy of the night before lingered between them, both wonderful and uncomfortable in the revealing light of day. Reality began to intrude as Maya checked her phone, which had finally regained signal. "My team is worried," she said, scrolling through messages. "They're organizing a search party. Should let them know you're safe," Nikolai replied, his voice carefully neutral. As Maya sent reassurances to her colleagues, promising to meet them at the expedition's base camp later that day, she felt a growing hollowness. Their time together had been extraordinary, but brief as storm-induced fantasy that couldn't withstand the return of normal life. "I should go," she said. Gathering her scattered clothing, Nikolai nodded, already withdrawing emotionally, the walls she'd glimpsed beyond rising once more. "I'll walk you down to the main trail." They moved through the morning in painful politeness, the easy connection of the previous day buried under the weight of imminent separation. Nikolai packed her a small lunch for the journey, and Maya carefully stored her sketchbook, now containing several hasty studies of his hands on the cello, his profile in candlelight. At the edge of the forest where the trail began, they paused awkwardly. "Thank you," Maya said finally. "For the shelter? For everything." "It was my pleasure," Nikolai replied formally, as though addressing a stranger. "Safe travels, Maya Collins." She waited, hoping for more, an invitation to return, a promise to stay in touch, but Nikolai merely stepped back, hands thrust deep in his pockets. "Goodbye, Nikolai Vasquez," she said finally. Turning away before he could see the tears threatening to spill, the walk back to civilization felt endless. Each step took her further from the magic of their shared isolation and back to her orderly, predictable life. By the time she reached the base camp, greeted by the relieved exclamations of her colleagues, Maya had convinced herself that what happened in the cabin had been just that, a beautiful anomaly. Best remembered, but not pursued. For a week, she threw herself into her work, completing illustrations with mechanical precision that lacked her usual passion. Her colleagues commented on her distraction, but attributed it to her ordeal in the storm. Then, On the expedition's final day, as Maya was packing her supplies, a local courier arrived with a package for her. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. The storm passed, but the music remains. And, with trembling fingers, Maya plugged the drive into her laptop and pressed play. What emerged from the speakers made her breath catch. It was the beginning of a composition that wove together the melody. Nikolai had played on his cello with something new, something that somehow captured the essence of their brief time together, but it was once again unfinished. A symphony of second chances. 2 months later, Maya sat in the back row of a small recital hall in the city, heart pounding as the lights dimmed. After receiving Nikolai's unfinished composition, she had made a decision that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. The program in her hands announced a rare appearance by Nikolai Vasquez, his first public performance in 3 years. What it didn't mention was the piece he would play or that Maya had anything to do with it. When Nikolai walked onto the stage, the audience's murmurs confirmed his legend status. He looked different in formal attire, his hair pulled back, but Maya recognized the tension in his shoulders, the careful way he acknowledged the applause. He took his seat behind the cello without speaking, closed his eyes for a moment, then began to play. The composition started with the melody Maya remembered from their night together, but it quickly evolved, incorporating themes that seemed to tell their story: the storm, the shelter, the connection, the parting. The audience sat spellbound as Nikolai played with an intensity that had been missing from recordings Maya had found online of his earlier career. As the piece approached the point where his recording had ended, Maya held her breath. This was the moment of truth. Had he finished it? Had he found a way forward? The music shifted into something unexpected, a dialogue between the cello and a recording of a piano that began to play through the hall's speakers. Maya gasped softly. The piano part was what she had added to his composition, her response to his musical confession, sent back to him with a note of her own. Some things deserve an ending. Some deserve a beginning. Nikolai had integrated her amateur contribution seamlessly, elevating it while honoring its essence. The two instruments, one live, one recorded, danced around each other, separated yet connected, until they finally resolved in a conclusion that spoke of hope and possibility. When the final note faded, there was a moment of perfect silence before the audience erupted in applause. Nikolai stood, bowing deeply, and then did something that caused whispers to ripple through the crowd. He gestured toward the back of the hall, directly at Maya. The second half of this piece, he announced, his voice carrying clearly, was composed in collaboration with Maya Collins, to whom it is dedicated. Shelter from the storm is not just about finding refuge from nature's fury, but about finding the courage to weather the storms within. Maya felt dozens of eyes turn toward her as she rose shakily to her feet. Nikolai's gaze found hers across the distance, a question in them that matched the one in his music. After the performance, she waited by the stage door, uncertainty and hope warring within her. When Nikolai emerged, still carrying his cello, they stood in silence for a long moment. "You finished it," Maya finally said. "We finished it," Nikolai corrected. "I couldn't have done it alone." "What happens now?" She asked the question, encompassing far more than just the music. Nikolai set down his cello case and took her hands in his. "Now, if you're willing, we see what other music we might make together." His smile held a vulnerability that made Maya's heart turn over. "I have more songs in me than I realized. They were just waiting for the right inspiration." "Like that," Maya whispered, stepping closer. "I think we have a whole symphony ahead of us." As Nikolai's lips met hers, Maya knew that sometimes the most beautiful compositions begin in the midst of storms. When we find ourselves in unexpected shelters with unexpected companions, creating harmonies neither could have imagined alone.